Hello. So, as I'm continuing to observe, and I don't know if others see it this way, but I am observing the rise of communism through the medical community in the United States and in other places as well. The rise of communism through the medical community in the United States and in Europe in response to the lockdowns, in response to mandates, and simply in response to the majority consensus on vaccines. Now, this minority, as I observe, has leadership and influence from those in the Jewish community. Why this is, I am sure, has a lot to do with their belief system. And I've studied their belief system over a very long time. And it is inescapable that if one adheres religiously to that belief system, then the effect of that is expressed through whatever channel it finds. In this case, it is finding its outlet through the medical community because the current situation is a medical situation. But it has many other facets. So, out of curiosity, we no longer have to assume that those who adhere to Judaism, not just Jews by ethnicity, but those who adhere to Judaism and have their own land with their own laws, with their own rules, with their own administration, and their own freedom in a democratic system, how are they currently handling the situation with COVID-19? I'd like to preface all this by saying that COVID-19 is definitely not the greatest health emergency. There are so many other conditions that would be justifiably given more attention. But this has deliberately been made the focus around the world, and the response that one sees exhibits long held beliefs coming to the fore. Now, I just typed in Israel COVID-19 as I had done earlier, and I'm just looking at the best matches. You can see the results that are available. And I will continue to go down and maybe open a few of those. I'm not familiar with some of these news sources, but I'm quite confident that others who perform a similar search will also come across pretty much the same articles. Maybe the sequence would be different, but at this given time, this would pretty much be the results they also see. And as I'm looking at these results, I'm seeing that not all of them are directly connected with my search terms. So let's look at like the last time. First of all, let's look at a result that comes from inside Israel. Again, the Jerusalem Post blogs is among the top results. Let's spend a few minutes looking at this. Now, this is the Jerusalem Post. Israel must clarify its confusing COVID-19 rules. This is the editorial. Here we have a familiar gentleman, Professor Nachman Ash, the coronavirus czar. He's on the left. And the health minister, Nidjan Horowitz. He's on the right. Let's read the opening paragraphs. Israelis are understandably confused about the rules and regulations the government has issued and regularly revises regarding COVID-19, from testing and vaccinations to quarantine and travel. We know that governments around the globe are struggling with the same problem, but if Israel is to provide a model for dealing with the pandemic and live up to its worldwide reputation as the vaccination nation, it's time for some clarity. Their words, not mine. Worldwide reputation as the vaccination nation. And yet, I would assure you, from what I have observed, that if you look at the Jews or the Jewish community spread across the United States or in Europe, maybe further down in Australia, in New Zealand, I haven't looked very much at those, but how did I come across them? I came across them on social networks, primarily on Twitter. And the narrative that comes from these people consistently overlooks what goes on in Israel and consistently focuses on the shortcomings in the countries where these communities are. Now, as individuals, that may not be the case. But as communities, rarely have I seen them speak critically of Israel, but they are vehement and loud in criticizing the countries where they are with their established systems. These people see something fundamentally wrong with the system on a very narrow criteria. And you can test this. They would be speaking about masking or they would be speaking about vaccination. And just on these two bases, they are willing to discard everything else that the system has accomplished. In the US, you will find these people speaking against the FDA and the CDC and the NIH, and usually and consistently, three things I've heard them say: absence of data, masking, vaccination, particularly mRNA vaccination, the ones made by Pfizer and Moderna. There is no nuance, there is no deep analysis, just blanket statements in an attempt by this minority to overthrow the established system, because it is perceived that something is wrong with the system. But how blind they are to the very same things happening in the motherland, in Israel. Why is that? Why is that? Should we read the third paragraph? We've read the first and second. With a record number of 600,000 people in isolation and more than 70,000 testing positive for the virus daily, the government this week cut the isolation time from 7 to 5 days, provided one is asymptomatic. It also announced that 25 to 30 million antigen tests will be distributed to the citizens of Israel. Think about that. I don't have to elaborate. It should be self-evident. I would admire the Jerusalem Post for being bold and frank. But the Jerusalem Post can be read anywhere in the world. So they are being critical of their own government. You do hear that aeroplane. I'm at home just reading for myself, and then I will share on YouTube what I'm thinking as I'm reading in the context of the information that is provided and what I've come across earlier. Part of the problem appears to be the mixed messages that public are getting from its leaders. Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, for example, explained the government's policy on Tuesday as follows, in quotes: "The government is looking for every way to assist the citizens of Israel in getting through the Omicron wave. We have decided to provide free tests to the citizens of Israel, pupils, and the overall population. Also, yesterday we announced the shortening of the quarantine period to 5 days. Instead of lockdowns, we are working to find solutions in order to keep the economy functioning however possible and to get through the worst of the wave together." This is all I wish to read, and at this point, actually, to continue reading, all one has to do is click on this and it will show the full article. Show full articles without continue reading button for 24 hours. So this is the page break that they have encoded into the page. I'd encourage you, if you're interested in this story, to read the story. Let's go back to the results. I don't know why this story is in relation to Israel, because the word Israel is not in the headlines. The word COVID-19 is in the headlines. Pfizer chief granted USD 1 million Genesis Prize for development of COVID-19 vaccine. Pfizer's vaccine was the first to win US approval for emergency use in December 2020, and Israel quickly became one of the first countries to inoculate its population with the vaccine. Talks about Albert Bourla, Chairman and Chief Executive of global pharmaceutical giant Pfizer Inc. And also read Moderna to come up with the combined COVID flu booster by 2023. So plans are already in place for 2023. And so on and so forth. Also read Merck to supply 3 million doses of molnupiravir to UNICEF. I'm sorry about those sounds coming from the outside. I've even spoken to them that I have my recording station and I would appreciate not being disturbed, but they're doing their work, and I don't expect a place like a restaurant to be quiet. They have their kitchen, and yes, you do hear sounds. Disturbing as it is what it is. So, coming back to the article, let's make the text a little bigger. Not that big. Okay, so the Greek-born Bourla, the son of Holocaust survivors, plans to donate his prize to projects aimed at preserving the memory of Holocaust victims, especially in Greece, the foundation said. Bourla's parents were among the few survivors of Thessaloniki's Jewish community. Thessaloniki's. That name is in the Bible also. Thessalonica, as I've read before. Okay, survivors of Thessaloniki's Jewish community, which was all but wiped out by the Nazis during World War II. In a statement issued by the foundation, Bourla said he was accepting the prize humbly and on behalf of all my Pfizer colleagues who answered the urgent call of history. Let me go back to comments I've read from those adherent to the Jewish community. They are against this man, Albert Bourla. And what I just now read about this man is new information to me about his background. It doesn't make me for or against this man. It's just his background and the profession he's involved in. And why not read the first paragraph as well from here? Albert Bourla, Chairman and Chief Executive of global pharmaceutical giant Pfizer Inc., was awarded on Wednesday the prestigious Genesis Prize for his efforts in leading the development of a COVID-19 vaccine. The $1 million award is granted each year to a person for their professional achievements, contributions to humanity, and commitment to Jewish values. So you have to be committed to Jewish values to receive this prize. Now that is very different from the Jewish values of those who are against the system that is built up. and they seek to build an alternate system free from the control of pharmaceutical companies, for one thing, free from the control of Pfizer, of Moderna, of Johnson and Johnson, of Merck. Where would these people get their medicines if they want to prescribe or take them? You should ask them. But they're quite critical of pharmaceutical companies, Pfizer being one of them. Let's get back to reading here. The Genesis Prize Foundation said Borla had received the largest number of votes in an online campaign in which some 200,000 people in 71 countries participated. 200,000 people in 71 countries. Commitment to Jewish values. Okay. All right, let's continue to read this. Israel finance minister gets COVID-19 after fourth dose of vaccine. I'm sure someone would be delighted to read this. So when did this news come out? On January the 20th, 12:22 p.m. Israeli Finance Minister Avigdor Lieberman confirmed that he has tested positive for COVID-19 after taking his fourth shot of the vaccine. Lieberman, 63, tweeted a photo of himself receiving a fourth COVID-19 vaccination dose on Jan 10. And this is it. And in Hebrew, written from right to left. Lieberman said on Twitter, "I feel good and will isolate in the next few days." He added that he will continue working from home. Israel's fourth dose push. Israel started administering a second round of boosters, otherwise known as fourth shots, to immunocompromised people in late December 2021. In January 2022, the campaign was extended to its over 60-year-olds and medical staff. So there is a special focus on the 60-year-olds and over and medical staff. You should check with Robert Malone what he thinks about this. He's a kind of a messiah these days. He says he is the inventor of mRNA vaccines. Every place you see his profile, that's what he says. He makes a false claim. And those who follow him don't challenge him on that claim. Sorry about all these disturbances. It seems like about these disturbances, I am no part of this community that's making all these sounds. Actually, I'm not. So that's about me. Don't count me with them. So this is about, here's another source, Middle East North Africa Financial Network. Israel reports 64,940 new COVID-19 cases. So news does get around these days, and there's no local news. Every news is international news. It applies to a particular locality, that's a different thing, but how is this MENAFN, how is this related to Israel or Jerusalem, but this news is from within Jerusalem. It seems like. So the Israeli Ministry of Health yesterday reported 64,940 new COVID-19 cases, bringing the total number of infections in the regime to 2,101,265. Meanwhile, the death toll from the virus rose to 8,369 with 19 new fatalities added, the highest daily figure since early October 2021. So I believe you get the idea pretty much of what I am reading here. You could read more news, any of the news that I'm looking at. So I'm not going to close these windows. Again, what I'll do is, as I upload this video to YouTube, I will also put the links for the articles that I have consulted. And of course, you can do your own search and read the results. So thank you very much for your time, and bye-bye.